Welcome to the Data Dojo Podcast, hosted by Adam Massey and powered by the Aurek Group. Every week, we dive deep into the world of data, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. Here, we bring you conversations with the leading minds who are shaping the future of these cutting-edge fields. So get ready to unlock the secrets of data and discover the stories behind the algorithms.
Hi there and welcome to the Data Dojo Podcast. I'm your host, Adam Massey. We're on season 1, episode 4, and this week I'm really excited to bring on Daniela Elia. Daniela, she is a data science and AI leader. She's got over 15 years experience working across different industry sectors across Australia and the UK. Most recently, she was actually brought on by Barrenjoey to head up their AI practice. And this year also, she was recognised as one of the top 100 brilliant women in AI ethics. So welcome to the podcast, Daniela. How are you today?
Thank you, Adam. I'm very good. Thank you very much.
Excellent. So the way I kick the podcast off is just to get a bit of background on your career today.
Sure.
Maybe you can just bring us up to speed on what your professional journeys look like within data and what you're kind of doing now.
Yes, sure. So look, my professional journey in data started in the financial services. I worked in the industry for many years in London and then here in Sydney. And it was when machine learning started to take up a little bit more here in Australia that I decided to move across in the field. In financial services, I worked as an economist and then as an equity researcher analyst.
Yep.
And then, as I said, because my passion was always about data, and then we can use data to understand trends in the markets primarily, but also in the economies. And data is still fascinating me. So when machine learning started to become more popular here in Australia, I investigated different methodologies, and then I eventually moved across. And most recently, my experiences were building data science functions from the ground up, both in startup environment, but also in large enterprises. And then obviously now with the advent of Gen AI, my focus is more on building a RAG application or agentic application for financial services at Barrenjoey and building the function there.
Excellent. And when did you make the move over to Australia? How long have you been here for?
It's been probably 15 years now. So yes, quite a long time ago.
So you mentioned generative AI there. So
Yes.
I guess that's something you're quite passionate about.
Yes.
And what I was interested to know was how do you see Gen AI enhancing productivity across different sectors within Australia? And is there any specific industries where you think AI might have the biggest impact?
So as you said, we understand the generative AI, the benefit of generative AI will be in enhancing and increasing employee and productivity.
Yep.
Across the board, we see obviously it applied in customer service, programming and IT divisions, manufacturing as well, in robotics and applications. To me, it is an augmentation tool in the sense that, yes, it will enable workers to do what they were doing before, but faster and in many ways better. But in enhancing productivity, I think that many companies are looking at it from a cost reduction perspective, that we can do more with less. And to me, generative AI, what it can bring is actually augmentation in increasing value of the product that we are building. So instead of looking from the perspective of if there is a task that we could complete in 1 week and now takes a few days, and so we reduce the workforce, we should actually look at it from the perspective of, well, if this task is only taking us a few days to complete, what it is that we can do for in the rest of the time that we are having that can increase value in the services and products that a company is offering, rather than just looking at it from a cost reduction perspective, which is, I think, where the potential for generative AI really lies. And in terms of industry, look, obviously, we have seen application of generative AI across many industries and many verticals. There are some obvious use cases for Australia because it reflects how the economy is is here in Australia. And so, but not to exclude, obviously there will be specific use cases, for instance, to the mining sectors.
Yeah.
But we have seen an example of a generative AI applied even in healthcare to build a new devices and improve the quality of life, for instance, for hearing.
Yeah.
There have been many other use cases for environmental impact. And so using generative AI, for instance, to track the health of the Great Barrier Reef and the corals and track changes in the environment and be better able to react to those changes in the environment and protect the Australian ecosystem, which we know is fragile and unique in many ways.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Using it for really good ethical purposes, I think, is something that everyone should be looking at. I guess with the AI, you mentioned there, obviously, it does boost efficiencies, but what challenges do you foresee, particularly in Australian businesses, adopting those kind of AI-driven solutions?
Yes, I think there will be a lot of education and change management that needs to take place.
Yeah.
Because we still live in a time where people are very excited about these solutions, and there is still quite a bit of hype.
Yeah.
With respect to what this generative AI application can effectively do and what it takes to spin up a very quick proof of concept, which I have seen and we have done it many times. For instance, even in the short time that I have worked at Barrenjoey, I know that proof of concept application can be spin up in a matter of days, if not hours. But then it's the work that it takes to get this proof of concept application to production.
Yeah.
And the work that it's involved in to make sure that the results are solid and robust when these applications are exposed to many different use cases, examples, that's much more complex. It's much more complex to get to the stage where the results that we're getting from LLMs are actually quite accurate and we are happy about the accuracy. A very quick proof of concept application, yes, can be done in a short time, but then the quality of the results most of the time is not really there. It's the information that is retrieved is very shallow. You might find it not very informative. And if you want precision and accuracy in the replies, then there's a lot more engineering that needs to happen in the background to get you to that point. Okay. And I think it will be an education for companies as well to try and understand that we can move faster. Yeah. We can deploy application much quicker than before, but there is still quite a lot of effort that's required to get to the point where a proof of concept application is deployed into production.
Okay. Interesting. So with the kind of coding side of things, obviously the rise of AI coding tools, do you feel like how is that going to affect those kind of job families? So your data engineers, your software engineers, do you see them becoming obsolete, or do you see their roles evolving with these new generative AI tools?
Yes. So this is something that I get asked many times, and especially for junior employees, because obviously the field is moving fast. There is a new release every day or every week, a new model coming up. And I have been asked many times if people should just be bothering learning Python, because they do perceive that maybe it's not necessary. And I know that big corporates are actually moving in that direction, where they think that maybe in 5 to 10 years, we won't be coding anymore, but we will be interacting with machine through natural language. And then there will be probably programmers that are building the knowledge base to feed into this LLM to enable us to interact through English. So yes, the programmers won't be programming anymore, but they will be instructing machines to complete a specific task or specific workflow, if not just acting as reviewers of the output provided by a machine. But this is, as I said, is something that corporates are working. It could be a reality one day. And in that case, you would have a programmer or the code developers that are employed by these corporations to build a knowledge base to feed into the LLMs.
And you obviously mentioned there you get asked that question from a lot of juniors.
Yes.
What kind of advice do you provide to them then, and what they should do with their skill sets and where they should focus their efforts?
Oh, look, I do recommend them to have a Copilot assistant of some sort.
Yeah.
I mentioned Copilot, but there are many different products, and what we have seen that it works very well because sometimes these agents are built with specific knowledge bases. So I always recommend to them to use the specific agent that's built within the platform. So for AWS should be Amazon Q, and then for Databricks, can't remember on the top of my head the name, but it should be their proprietary agentic or code advisor. Because they are tailored with the knowledge base and they would suggest the code with best practices embedded into the output and the answer to the queries that the user is submitting. But I do also recommend to, in a way, use the brain.
Yeah.
And the output may not always be correct. It may point to a solution that it's not actually solving the bug in the code or the problem that they are facing. It's a great help if they want to learn a new feature. But normally, and this I can agree with, it helps intermediate users. So if you have no previous knowledge, you will still find it very difficult to use an assistant to develop code, just simply because you don't know what to ask.
Yes.
This assistant. If you are an intermediate developer, you have some background knowledge, then these assistants are becoming very useful because it cuts the time that you were previously spending browsing documentation, browsing blogs, browsing different data sources. You ask the question, they come back with very pointy information, and then all you need to do is either tweak the code to make it relevant to the specific use cases that you are working on, or sometimes they are even able to just fix your code for you and then apply a little bit of common sense or, as I said, sanitize the code because it's always not the best performant. So whilst it works, it then requires you a further step to upskill yourself to make the most best performing code, looking at different solutions and improve from there. It's just, and this is true for any LLM, it's just a guide and the rough first step. The human is still needed to improve the solutions.
Yes, excellent. So I guess on that track of thought, across quite a lot of different industries, AI is transitioning from a simple tool to a more integrated part of daily tasks. So what is your perspective, I guess, on this evolution and how do you see it shaping the future of work?
I think at a certain point, we wouldn't even talk about AI being embedded. We will accept as a de facto event. And there is, I will cite you this example that very dear mentor of mine gave me once. So when Excel was introduced, it was a sort of a novelty and there was a lot of discussion about whether it would or not make accounting professionals unemployed. But then that didn't happen just because Excel enabled them to do more with less. But also nobody is nowadays questioning why or if an accountant is using Excel within its practice. We take it as granted. We take it as granted that we are using technology like computers and mobile phone. And I believe that, or I'm hoping that we will get to a point where AI, and we trust that it's safe, and we know what the limitations are, but there won't be any discussion anymore whether or not it is generated from an AI solution or not. And obviously so regarding this, there are some aspects where having a watermark that tells me this test text has been generated by an AI solution that's warranted. This conversation, you're not conversing with a human, you're conversing with a chatbot that's warranted. But we accept the within limits, the replies and information that is provided to us from a chatbot, it's safe and can be trusted.
Yeah. So I guess what you're saying there, it's important to differentiate between the two. I'm guessing there's potential risks that if you rely too heavily on AI in decision making, that might cause some issues for a company. Is that right?
Yes. And we have seen, so there are many different aspects in how AI could impact a company. And we have seen it where AI is taking, not saying necessarily the wrong decision, but it may create reputational damage for a company, even financial damage if we have seen past example where, for instance, AI was signing contracts with customers, or sometimes even like in litigation cases where AI is drafting legal documentation and the information is incorrect, missing, bias, and that creates obviously risks.
Yes.
These are risks that unfortunately we cannot control. And no matter how much, at the moment, the problem of hallucination has not been resolved.
No.
And we don't have a viable either algorithm or technology that is able to solve the problem of hallucination, or even whenever I look at it from a legal perspective, sometimes the replies that we get from the algorithms are actually correct, but they are incomplete. And if they're missing a detail that it's actually important because of the context that you're working on, that might cause, again, a risk for the company operating it.
Yeah.
So for me, it's more like a matter of educating the workforce of the limits. And again, the fact that the human shouldn't be removed from the process altogether.
So I just want to move on to responsible AI usage, and I know that's something you're really passionate about. So I just wanted to understand, what are the unique opportunities that responsible AI development presents for Australia, especially given its growing tech ecosystem at the moment?
Sure. Look, Australia is at the forefront of developing a responsible AI framework, and we have a group of researchers very active here in Australia, ensuring that we develop AI responsibly. My concern is mostly around trust, and unfortunately here in Australia, trust in AI is very low. And I think that these frameworks that are nowadays voluntary mostly, but will become much more stronger in the future, and obviously with the passing of legislation on AI around the globe, and hopefully one day here in Australia as well. Those regulatory framework will increase trust in AI and will allow people to adopt it more broadly. The risk that I've seen and the challenge for Australia is the fact that people are not trusting it. And the lack of trust is much more evident here in Australia than in other economies. And so the risk is that Australia will fail in adopting generative AI application. And as we were discussing at the start of this talk, because we believe the generative AI can lead to increased productivity. And we know that the Australian economy has an issue with low productivity. If there is not enough trust in this system and not much adoption in this system broadly, the Australian economy will potentially miss out on the opportunity to actually improve from a productivity perspective, and obviously that will have repercussion on the wealth and well-being of the Australian population.
But why do you think particularly Australia is maybe lagging behind slightly?
I've actually never investigated that too much. I'm not quite sure. Anecdotally, I know that, for instance, in the US, it's much more, it's a much more open economy where people would try new products and new things. They're more open-minded. Here in Australia, for better or for worse, we are a little bit more reluctant, and we are always much more risk-averse in a sense. And we want to go on a tried and test path before embarking on something that can damage us.
Yes.
But again, this is my very modest opinion. I never quite investigated it. I always more taking it from the perspective that I know in some respect it's a good thing. Because we take a more cautious approach to the deployment, and we probably don't have as much cases where AI has impacted the health or well-being of an individual compared to the reputation of a company, simply because we haven't dived deep into it.
And I guess for ethical AI, how should organizations go about establishing ethical guidelines for AI use cases?
Yes, this is so. It's quite hard because in a way it is very new. And as I said, even from a regulatory perspective, there have been a framework developed, legislation been drafted, but normally what companies lament is that the lack of practical approach. And even from a legislation perspective, sometimes it is a little bit very high level. And when you want to translate it to corporate stakeholders, it's quite hard to come with a practical implementation of those framework. And especially now that there could be two different approaches. One is when you build your own AI application, you are across all the details, you have a much better control of what you are developing, you can have more guardrails and safety nets around it, because you are developing the code and developing the solution, to a point. How the solution works. But most companies, they are acquiring AI from vendors, and they are enabling their employee to use that AI and scrutinize how the employees are doing it, are using it, how the employees are interacting with this AI tool becomes much more difficult. And then there is a little bit, because as I said, Australian in general, corporates in Australia do not trust, and the trust in AI is quite low, a reluctance on building a lots of governance processes that could stall innovation. So you have a sort of some tension between stakeholders wanting to deploy generative AI and maybe stakeholders that are supporting the deployment broadly across an organization of AI, because they do appreciate the advantage that it could have. But then there is the other force. If you start to build a lot of governance processes around it, obviously that will delay innovation. Sometimes it will stall innovation, but it's probably more at the moment the reduction in the speed of innovation, the impact. There's a lot, obviously, from an education perspective that needs to be done on safe usage of AI. In my work, we have guidelines which we have provided to employees to guide them to uses of AI that are supported and uses of AI that are not supported. Applications the employees are welcome to use in their workday, and application that we are restricting just because it becomes then too cumbersome and too risky for our organization. If we have a plethora of different solutions with AI embedded into it, how we govern a safe use of those applications, it becomes really tricky and complex. But then also on the reverse side, we don't want to ban it completely because we know the employees will use it anyway. So we want to avoid those situations where the employees will turn to a different workaround, a solution, maybe uploading data through an app that they have access through a personal laptop or a mobile phone. And we want to redirect them to the apps that are supported so that the data and confidential information stay safe within a safe environment. And the employee won't necessarily find that they want to turn to different solutions because they have everything they need to do their job well. And it's, again, in a safe environment, protected environment.
Yeah. So I guess the importance of continuous education and upskilling the workforce in AI literacy is really crucial.
Yes. And it will become even more so, as we touched upon before. The developments in AI are quite fast. And even myself, I do sometimes find myself, it's overwhelming. And the amount of new features from new platform, new models. And it's not just from a personal perspective to try and, it's quite hard at the moment to try and stay across and abreast all the different technological solutions to be able to then recommend to stakeholders the best for the best use case. And then even from an enterprise perspective, once you develop an application, you can't really switch and change in a short period of time because it becomes too costly to go again into that cycle of development, testing, and then in production, and switching from one platform to another in very short periods of time. And even like switching a model from a model to another because suddenly there has been an improvement in accuracy on the latest release from one company versus another. Again, you that would entail re-entering that cycle where you take this model, you test it for your specific use case. If it does lead to an improvement, then it goes into the development, testing, production cycle. They still take quite some time and with involvement from different teams, and it's again cost for a company. But at the same time, going back to your original point about education, it's something that we need to become more accustomed to. I have always continued to learn, and I'm hoping that I will be continue to do that. That's something that excites me. Learning new approaches, new methodologies. It's something that employees, students will need to be very comfortable with going forward. And probably even more so, very comfortable with the fact that they won't have just one job. I have many through my career. Probably, as you said before, would we have programmers? Probably not. They will move to different roles, and it will become much more common. Not only there was an argument I remember reading back some time ago about workers no longer working for the same company the entire professional working life. They will become much more common to have your job as a programmer, for an example, across different companies. But then the status quo will become that you will have different professions across different industries and different companies, and that will probably be the future. And so continuing education will be paramount in this respect. People who don't accept change or find it more difficult to either change direction, upskill themselves, will probably struggle more.
And that's, to be honest, that's not just related to AI, really. That's happened throughout the years. You know, if you don't innovate and evolve your skill set, then you will get left behind.
Yes, but and this I'm passionate because I'm also doing a PhD in future of works topics. So it's much more strong, the effect in jobs related to technology.
Yeah.
The skills of an hairdresser haven't changed much
No.
over the years. Probably won't. I don't know. Maybe someday we'll have a robot doing our hair and we'll find something else to do for the hairdressers. But as an example, there are some occupations where, yes, some aspects of it have changed. Maybe the products they're using, maybe the machinery, the technology that they're using, but hairdresser, bakers is another example.
Yeah.
Their job hasn't really changed much over the years. So certainly they haven't experienced the rapid pace of change that I am experiencing.
Yes.
But some others, and specifically, as I said, all the digital occupation, there is, and this has been proved in research as well. We have seen that you can be a programmer today as you were a programmer 2 years ago, but the skills that you were needing 2 years ago are completely different from the skills that you need today, and will be probably completely different from the skills that you need in 2 years' time.
Yeah.
And this is not just the programming languages or the technical skills, it's also the soft skills.
Yeah.
As I said, especially for the mature workforce, I believe it's very hard for them to adjust to the fastest pace of upskilling and learning. But it's something that workers working in IT or technology-related, digitally related fields will need to be much more accustomed to.
Yeah, 100%. I guess then on that thread, what role do you think educational institutions or government, private sector employers should play in promoting responsible AI literacy across all levels of society, really?
Well, it's not just responsible AI, but one issue that we have at the moment is because of the rapid change in the skills required by employer, we do find that the current curriculum do not reflect the skills that the workers are looking for. And so we have an issue in the fact that, for instance, we have still sort of old-fashioned cycles where you enter a degree and then you exit that degree 3 years later, say.
Yeah.
And as we discussed just now, 3 years later, the skills that you need might be completely different from the skills that you need when you enter your degree. So your degree is obsolete already as you got it. Look, there is some work that's been done and moving more towards micro-credentials, where people complete shorter educational courses, much more tailored to the skills that they need in their daily jobs. And this across the board. It's not just for university, but for even like professional certificates or something of the like, so that we maintain the skills more up to date. But then the opposing forces comes from corporate. We are still, when we are recruiting, and you are probably very familiar with the process, you have a job description with a requirement that says in order to apply for the jobs needs to have bachelor qualified in some fields. And so we need to change the recruiting process as well. We don't currently have sound evaluation frameworks where we can safely evaluating the skills of the candidate to say this candidate has got the skills required. There are more and more tools and services that we can use to help us with the job using AI as well. But I believe that there's a lot that still needs to be done. For responsible AI as well. It's not only enabling students and workers of the future to be able to use the technology efficiently, but also know the limitations. And it's, I think, much harder, and this I see it from graduate of junior employees, because they tend to be very excited about the next new shiny thing.
Yeah.
They plunge into it without actually taking the time to look at the limitation, to look where the message given is from the marketing department of an organization, cherry picking the best example to show all the promises about a technology and what it actually can deliver. It's much harder for young. And in a way, it's good that they are so enthusiastic, but in some other way, it's always hard for me to come as the devil's advocate and say, okay, fine, but where is the gap here? What are the limitations? Don't just look at all the gold and shine around new solutions being given to you.
Yeah, excellent. So I guess for data scientists and machine learning engineers in the future, something you mentioned earlier, I don't know, how do you see these kind of roles then evolving? What are the next steps for them? You did mention earlier about maybe perhaps you'll be more specialized to certain industry segments based on the fact that those areas are using AI in unique ways compared to others. But what are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on the next stages for data scientists and their role?
Oh, look, and this I know because I read a few papers that are proclaiming that AI can, in a way, do the entire cycle of activities that's involved into building an AI application. So it can substitute the data scientist.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, because I have the evidence that it's actually no, they can't. They can't because it's much more complex. They can automate simple tasks, and I do believe and we could come to a point where this automation will improve a lot from where we are today. And maybe one day I will be just reviewing. I will be directing a robot on an assistant, and the assistant will do much of the hard work or the lift, and I'll simply be a reviewer or the output or guide the assistant to looking at different scenarios, looking at the same problem from a different angle, bringing different perspective, but the mechanic work will all be automated. And this maybe I can believe.
Yeah.
There was a recent company who managed to raise quite a large sum of money. And what they're trying to do is, for instance, even from a research perspective, is generate an LLM or an AI software that automates the entire research flow.
Yeah.
And this is particularly geared to the production of generative AI solution algorithms. Because we know that some research use cases and application will need a specific machinery, and so in that case it can be completely automated. But for, say, if I want to improve an algorithm, yes, I do believe that some elements of the research can be automated, because what we are doing is basically taking what's been done so far, identify a gap, try to improve on that gap, and then spin up an experiment looking at several different scenarios, and then collecting the data and measure if we have found an improvement or not.
Yeah.
And that it's a repeatable flow. So that has potential for automation, but what they don't take into account is the fact that many times in research we share our experiences and what we have collected with different researchers to bring in different perspective. And it's that diversity that I'm less confident an algorithm will ever have.
Okay.
Just because it will be say path, or might maybe one day be able to generate several different scenarios, but again, there is a lot more depth that a group of researchers coming along with different experiences, different background can bring to a solution that and nowadays for sure a machine can bring too.
Excellent. Well, look, really happy to have you on the podcast today. Really enjoyed our chat. I guess for those who want to find out more about Daniela, what's the best way to connect? To go on LinkedIn and connect with you there?
Yes, it would be LinkedIn. And look, because probably my age shows, I'm not very active on Discord. I have an Instagram account which I logged in a couple of times in the past 3 years. So yes, I would think that for professional purposes, LinkedIn will be the best.
Perfect. So yeah, follow Daniela on LinkedIn. I'll add some links to the show notes as well. But great to have you on. Thank you, Daniela.
Thank you for inviting me.